بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Welcome to Fiqh al-Muamalat series. Today's topic is about the pillars of the contract, the elements of the pillar of the contract. We have talked and highlighted in the previous stations the definition of the contract, so we move on today to talk in a high-level description on the elements of the pillar of the contract, where we will be talking about the two contracting parties, the subject matter, and the sigha. So, as I mentioned, we would like to kind of describe the pillar of the contract in a high-level approach, and in the following sessions, we will pick up each pillar, then we zoom into it with more discussion and with more details. So, based on the definitions and of the contract that has been mentioned previously, it's a kind of connections between the offer and acceptance, which mark its effect on the subject matter, whereby price goes to the sellers and the goods goes to the buyer. So, basically, from the definition, what you can highlight, there are parties involved in the contract, and hence we are talking about what's so-called al-aqidan, or the two contracting party, in this case the buyer and the seller, which is the first pillar. Then we are talking about connections of offer and acceptance. So we are talking about offer and acceptance, which is the sigha, or which is the expression of the contract, which is the second pillar. Then the buyers and the sellers, when they express their offer and acceptance on what? On something that someone wants to buy and the other one wants to put equivalent price to it, which is the price and the goods, which is the third pillars. So as a result of that, we may say that there are three major pillars in the contract. Three major pillars, or three major elements, or three major components of the contract. The first one, the contracting party. Or the two contracting party. It depends if the contractual party are two or three or more than that. So the contracting party, which is known in Arabic as well, al-aqidan, meaning in the case if we give example, we always give example on a sales because it's a typical contract that we're going to discuss first. In the case of sales, we have a buyer and a seller. So these are the two contracting parties, or we call them al-aqidan, that represent the four pillars of the contract. The second pillar is the subject matter of the contract, or mawdu' al-aqd. This subject matter, or mawdu' al-aqd, in the case of sales, is goods and price. Goods and the price. Now the third pillar is a sigha, or the expression of the contract, or the statement of the contract, which is the issuance of the offer and acceptance. So these are basically the three pillars of the contract. You may say there are three pillars in short, or you may say there are six pillars in details, which means the first pillar, price and goods, so two, buyer and seller, two, and offer and acceptance, two. So basically six. Price and goods, buyer and sellers, offer and acceptance. Either six pillars, and each one has a terms and conditions, or in general or in brief, you may say three pillars, but each pillars represent two components. So we have price and goods, seller and buyer, and offer and acceptance. In the bilateral contract will require more than one party. So let me here highlight the Sharia requirement for each one. But here I will just list them without any details, just to have an idea what are the terms and the conditions required in each pillar. And as I mentioned, in the coming session, we'll pick up each sessions, one pillar, then we discuss in details. So the first one, which is price and goods, there are, in general, high-level description, four requirements: legality of the subject matter, the specifications, meaning both parties have to know the subject matter. When we say subject matter, you have to keep in mind we're talking about price and goods. Don't direct your thought to the goods, then you forget about the price. Price is part of it. So when we say subject matter, we are talking about both goods and price, because sometimes people, when we say subject matter, so they always focus on the subject matter, like for example, house or a car or a book, for example, then they forget about the price. And when we say subject matter, basically both price and goods. So if there is any requirements is applicable for both of them, of course, depending on the nature of each one. So the first requirements of the price and goods basically is the legality. They should be legal. The second one, the specification. They should be known to both parties. The third one, the capability and the ability to hand over the subject matter to the other party. And the following one, the subject matter should be in existence. Of course, with some exception that we will talk about it later on. So high-level requirements, there are 4 requirements. Of course, later on when we detail out, we may break down each one to further sub requirements that may need it. So the second one, or the second pillars, which is the seller and the buyer, number one, the puberty of the two parties. Parties could be female or male. So we are talking about the competency requirements here, such as the puberty. We are talking about the sanity, the sound mind, and the maturity, ability to manage finance in appropriate way. Offer and acceptance, using the past tense, which is recommended, confirmation of the offer and acceptance, and the clarity of the offer and acceptance, and also the confirmations and the connectivity of the offer and acceptance, which is Majlis al-Aqd. So this is the general requirements in brief of the 6 pillars, or these 3 pillars. Of course, each one requires details and requires what's so-called further discussion that we will provide it in detail later on when we pick up one pillars by one into the future discussions. So I just want to highlight here that the Sharia compliance requirements, when we talk later on maybe in the coming session about the Sharia compliance requirements basically somehow indirectly and directly are derived from this, meaning that from here you can build, start to build your checklist on the contract. Of course, this is a contract, and most of the requirements are applicable and apply to sales, but it could be also somehow applied to other contract as well, such as leasing and partnership and so on and so forth, with minor modifications of the terminology that has been mentioned here. But the point here is that by understanding these pillars, 3 or 6, and appreciations of the requirements of each one, from here you can start build your checklist on the compliance, meaning that is there any contract, so you have to start doing the tick on each requirement to ensure at least the first level, at the high level descriptions of the contract has been fulfilled. Then you zoom down to other specific requirements according to the applications of the contract. So this is the overall description of the contract, and I think we'll just make stop here, and we will have further discussions on providing further details on each one in the coming session. With that, thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.